When you picture Toronto, what comes to mind? Probably glass towers, right? A super modern city. But what if I told you that beneath all that steel and concrete, the city's real foundations are ancient, stretching back thousands and thousands of years, way before Toronto was even a word?
Yeah, this quote really nails it. It's like there's this whole other story hiding in plain sight. So in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to peel back the pavement, dig a little deeper, and uncover that incredible history, from its earliest indigenous roots right up to the challenges it faces today.
All right, so let's get into it. Our story doesn't start with skyscrapers or even buildings. It starts with the land itself, millennia before anyone had even thought to draw a map with the name Toronto on it.
So where did the name even come from? Well, it's actually pretty amazing. It comes from the indigenous term takaranto, and it means where trees stand in water. Now, this wasn't just some poetic phrase. It was a literal description of these incredible, sophisticated fishing weirs, basically rows of wooden stakes in the water, that the ancestors of the Huron-Wendat and Petun nations used for centuries. Think about that. The city's name is literally rooted in indigenous engineering and a deep, deep understanding of the land.
And you've got to understand, this place was not an empty wilderness waiting to be discovered. For literally millennia, this area was a thriving crossroads, kind of like a natural superhighway of rivers and trails that connected different nations. It was a bustling hub for trade, sure, but also for diplomacy, for sharing knowledge, for ceremonies. It was the center of a vibrant world long, long before any Europeans showed up.
But of course, that all began to change. When Europeans arrived on the scene, it was a massive turning point. It brought conflict, and more than that, it introduced a completely different way of thinking about the land itself, a totally different idea of what it means to own it.
At first, the European footprint was pretty small. You had the French explorer Etienne Brulé passing through way back in 1615. Then, a French trading post popped up, but it didn't last. The real game changer was in 1763. With the Treaty of Paris, a document signed an entire ocean away, this whole territory was handed over to the British. And that set the stage for a whole new era.
And this right here perfectly captures the heart of the problem. In 1787, the British start something they call the Toronto Purchase. But just look at these two columns. From the British point of view, it's a done deal, a permanent land sale, a legal transfer. But for the Mississaugas, it was something else entirely. It was about renewing an alliance, about agreeing to share the land. You're talking about two completely different worldviews just crashing into each other.
Because of this huge misunderstanding, a new agreement was pushed through in 1805. And this time, to make sure their claim was solid, the British Crown got over 250,000 acres for just 10 shillings. So here's the key takeaway. The very land the city was built on was contested from the absolute get-go, and that created a legacy of disputed ownership that's still being dealt with in land claim negotiations even today. Okay, so with the land secured, at least in their eyes, the British got to work building. But this next chapter in the city's life, it was basically forged in fire. It was all about crisis, destruction, and a real fight for its identity. So in 1793, this guy, Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe, shows up with a plan, a blueprint. First, he sets up Fort York for defense, and then, and this is huge for today's city, he lays down a rigid, straight-line grid of streets. You know them, King, Front, Yonge. He basically just stamped a British imperial order right on top of a landscape that had been shaped for centuries by those ancient indigenous trails.
And guess what? Just 20 years later, that brand new order would face its first major test.
That's right, the War of 1812. American troops stormed in and captured the little town of York. They burned the Parliament buildings to the ground, ransacked the place, and basically left the brand new capital in ashes. It was a totally devastating blow.
But check out this number. Even after being burned to the ground, by 1834 the population bounced back and grew to 9,000 people. And that's when it finally shed the name York and was officially reborn as the city of Toronto.
And get this, Toronto was born feisty. Its very first mayor, a guy named William Lyon Mackenzie, was such a firebrand that in 1837 he led an actual armed rebellion against the rich ruling elite. He was demanding political reform. So right from the start, this rebellious streak was baked into the city's DNA, and you can see echoes of it in all kinds of social movements that have shaped Toronto's politics over the years.
All right, so that rebellious energy, it pretty soon got channeled into something else. Industry.
The next chapter is all about this raw, explosive growth that transformed Toronto into a real economic powerhouse.
And what was the spark? The railway. It was a total game changer. The first line opened in 1853, and just 3 years later, the Grand Trunk Railway linked Toronto all the way to Montreal and the Atlantic Ocean. Suddenly, the city wasn't some remote outpost anymore. It was a major continental hub.
This new railway connection just lit a fire under industrial growth. You saw these absolute giants emerge, like the Gooderham and Worts Distillery and the Massey Harris Farm Equipment Company. And these weren't just big local companies. They became the largest of their kind in the world, shipping products from Toronto to pretty much everywhere. But all that rapid, dense industrial growth, it came with some serious risks. And in 1904, that risk became reality. A massive fire just tore through the heart of the city, causing $10 million in damage. I mean, that was an absolutely catastrophic amount of money back then. And, just like when York was burned down almost 100 years earlier, this disaster actually became another major turning point. Out of those ashes came modern fireproof building codes, a whole new blueprint for a tougher, more resilient city that was ready to take on the 20th century. So while the city was rebuilding its physical core with new bricks and steel, something even bigger was happening. A much more profound transformation was underway. The city wasn't just being rebuilt physically. Its very soul was being reimagined. Because now, people from all over the world were starting to arrive. Especially after World War II, you see these huge waves of immigration really start to change the city. So many people arrived from places like Italy and Portugal and Greece. They built these incredible, vibrant communities that completely and forever changed the cultural fabric of Toronto. And the sheer scale of this growth was just staggering. Seriously, look at this. In 1945, the population was about 1 million. By 1971, that's only 26 years later, it had doubled. Doubled to 2 million people. The city was absolutely exploding. Now, this transformation got a major boost from Canada's 1967 points-based immigration system, which basically opened the doors to the whole world. And that led to this incredible milestone in 2016, where for the first time, more than half, over 50% of Toronto's residents identified as a visible minority. And that's so much more than just a statistic, right? It's the city's reality. As someone said during the Raptors' massive championship parade back in 2019, seeing all those fans from every imaginable background celebrating together, that's it. The city's diversity isn't a number on a chart. It's the actual pulse of the place. It's what you feel in every single neighborhood. So that brings us to the modern era. How did this growing, incredibly diverse collection of neighborhoods actually become the single megacity we know today? And, just as important, what kind of challenges did that massive transformation bring with it? Well, two really big events shaped the city we see now. First, in 1976, the CN Tower was finished. It immediately became this iconic symbol of the city's global ambition. Then, in 1998, you had the controversial amalgamation, which merged 6 different municipalities all into one single giant city of Toronto. But all that growth, it's created some serious growing pains. The average price of a home has skyrocketed past $1 million. Public transit is constantly struggling to keep pace. And the population of the greater metro area, it's on track to blow past 8 million people. That's a ton of pressure. And all of this leaves us with a really big question for the future. When you look back, from a place meaning where trees stand in water, to a contested colonial town, to a global metropolis, Toronto's story has always been about massive change. So the challenge now, looking forward, is how to build a city of opportunity that truly, genuinely belongs to everyone who calls it home.